get this photo of the square out of here and say good evening to one and all who are going to tune in tonight. Hopefully, a few people do have some questions about the Prahl Tract. And since there probably won't be a huge turnout, anyone that does show up this evening, if you have questions in general about Lower Paxton Township, that's really going to be my expertise. Possibly some things about the school district and the new kindergarten centers. I know some stuff about that. Yeah, you're more than welcome to put those in the comments as well. We'll just take them one by one as you have questions. And if you're listening to the conversation, you'll hear some things that maybe you don't understand. Just put them right in the comments. We'll go down one by one to try and help you out. Now, I would say I'm an expert when it comes to these development plans. I've been bouncing around to probably a few hundred meetings. I'm not sure what the number is. I've been going to local government meetings as a professional journalist since 1993. So I've seen a lot of stuff come down the pike. Being an expert doesn't mean you know everything. I don't know everything about everything when it comes to local government. I know more than most, and that makes you an expert. So I'll give it my best shot. But there was a huge number of comments on the proposal that came in last night, as far as not actually an official proposal, but there was a discussion about what might happen on this about a 140-acre tract surrounded by Earl Drive on the north, Colonial Road on the western portion there, Devonshire Road down at the bottom, and then heading up the east side of the property, Devon Manor housing development, and also the pool there. So that's what happened last night as far as just a discussion at the Planning Commission meeting. I don't see any comments at this point, so we'll stand by to see if anyone has any questions. There are a few people watching. Yeah, some of the questions you might have is, why is this property being developed? What kind of process is the township going to go through to review and ultimately approve or disapprove a housing development from going in here? How can you get involved and maybe working with some of your neighbors to make sure that your concerns are addressed, and that if they're not adequately addressed, that maybe that you would, at the earliest stages, you start to tell your local officials, initially the Planning Commission officials, that this is not really something you want to see come into your area, and why you don't want to see it come in. You can post questions about that. What would be helpful? What can you do to stymie this kind of development, or at least delay it? It's going to be a cooperation between the township and the residents, working things through and making sure that all the township ordinances, the rules, regulations for building housing developments in our township are followed. And then, of course, issues related to transportation, stormwater, all kinds of issues are going to come up because this particular tract is, surrounded by all kinds of development, and so there's going to be many issues here. So I don't see any comments as of yet. I was out on the property today because I never had really looked at the open space out there, because you really can't see it from Colonial Road. You can't see it from Earl Drive. Maybe you can on the backside of Devon Manor, but I've never been over there to check out those streets and see what it looks like from where the backyards end and the farm property starts. So this was the scene I saw. Not too far away from the Prahl house. Nice looking fields, and this is a small portion of this 140-acre tract. For the first time, I put my eyes on this beautiful, stately, historic home that I guess was built in the 1700s. And at one time, in the comments, you may or may not have seen it, Jay Purdy, a local historian, longtime resident of Lower Paxton Township, and a member of the Lower Paxton Township Historical Commission had posted that one of the rooms, the upper rooms there, was reserved for a black woman who was a slave. So that tells you if we're back in slavery times, this building's been watching over this property for a long time. So I'll stay on for a few more minutes. No questions have come in that I can see, no comments. So if you have a burning question about the whole situation, I mean, a few weeks ago, I got word from a reliable source that this property had been sold. And some people questioned that because I don't even know if the sale of the property showed up yet at the county courthouse or not. So I knew we were on the right track whenever the planning commission meeting agenda came out, and sure enough, the Prahl Tract was listed for discussion. Again, there's been no formal plan submitted, and something unusual happened based on comments made last night at the planning commission meeting. One member, I think his name is Douglas Grove, who's been on the planning commission for over 2 decades, said he had never seen a developer come in just to have a discussion with the planning commission and with members of the public that attended to try and get some information right up front as far as what some of the concerns in the neighborhood are, and get a reading from the planning commission members as far as what some concerns they might have. So that was a first for him in over 20 years of serving with the planning commission. Now, personally, I saw it happen to some degree whenever Blue Ridge Village, used to be the Blue Ridge Country Club, Triple Crown Corporation bought that club. The golf club ran it for about 5 years. And when it didn't turn out to be financially viable, and some of the buildings and different things on the country club needed some major upgrades, they decided to develop the property. In that case, I think they consulted with the supervisors, not the planning commission, to get a read on what they wanted. And in that case, Triple Crown Corporation had to create a brand new zoning district that would match up with what the supervisors said about having something where like a 55 plus development, at least in part, that people could stay there as they went through life. You know, there's a assisted living facility there. I guess many of the homes, townhomes or whatever is in Blue Ridge Village are some of them, there's no steps to get into the building, single story, that type of thing. So people could go there and live the rest of their life there. And if they needed assisted living, it was all going to be there with the stores and everything else. So that was a little bit different process. Took several years to get that one through. And I would imagine that if a plan comes in, it looks like a plan is going to come in from Mission Land Company based here in Lower Paxton Township, that it's going to take a couple years, 2-3 years to probably push through a plan. So it's not going to happen overnight. Okay, we do have one comment. Let's see what that says. Dolores Roberts writes, between 3:30 and 5:30, and now takes you 4 or 5 red lights to get across Colonial Road from Devonshire. I don't think we need more traffic. Well, Dolores, that's certainly going to be an issue with the roads that surround this property, either being, I guess Earl Drive is more or less a paved over country road. We all know that Colonial Road is already somewhat treacherous with all the streets that come into it, the speed of some drivers, and certainly that Devonshire Road, Colonial Road intersection there with was that Crumbs Mill on the other side. Yeah, that's that particular light in that intersection is not performing well now. The good news is that with this particular plan, and any plan like this, the developer, early in the process of working with the township and also PennDOT, is going to have to engage a traffic engineering firm, and they're going to do a full-blown traffic study for the whole area that would be impacted by this development. And last night, the developers indicated they were looking to do 250, 300 homes, whatever the regulations would allow. They were going to try and shoot for that. And so it's going to be a sizable development if that comes true. And yeah, it's serious impacts to the roads for sure, and the intersection you're concerned about. So I don't think there's any question that traffic study is going to indicate that there's going to need to be some major improvements to these roads. And if they come up with, if everyone involved, the developer, the public, you as a resident and your neighbors, the township, and PennDOT can agree on a plan that makes those changes in a sufficient way, then they can move forward. But that's going to be a major thing. Now, actually, the decision makers will be PennDOT, the township, and the developer. Those are the three parties. Now, you as a citizen will have plenty of input as that plan is unveiled publicly, and it may take them several months to put that traffic plan together. And it's probably going to. I would imagine, given everything involved here, that plan would probably cost at least $1 million to actually go through and have someone take a look at the traffic and come up with what needs to be done. So that's going to be a key thing. Any developer that comes in there, and in this case, it's Mission Land Company, they're going to have to cross that, have to check that thing off, that they have a sufficient plan to address concerns, and it's actually going to work financially for them. So this is not a done deal for sure that they can come up with something. So we'll just have to wait and see. But this is part of the risk that a developer takes in coming into a property like this, where there's known traffic issues and other issues we haven't mentioned at this point. They're taking a risk that they'll be able to, if they spend $500,000 or $1 million on a traffic plan, and are those results going to be suitable for them as business people to make it work? I can't speculate what's going to happen there, but clearly that's going to be a big thing. So thanks for the question, Dolores. Anything else? Anyone else have a question? You should be able to put it in the comments, and I'll be able to see it come in here. I did make a couple notes. Let's see if I can find them as far as things that people had said. Yeah, we talked a few minutes ago about Blue Ridge Village on Lingelstown Road. So one commenter equated this Prahl Tract with what happened at Blue Ridge Country Club. And as I already mentioned, that Blue Ridge Country Club, now Blue Ridge Village, was a completely different thing in that the developer had to come up with a brand new zoning district and get that developed, debated, and passed before they could even begin to plan what they were going to do there. So that made that process very long-winded, numerous years, and it cost them a lot of money to do that as well, because the developer, in this case Triple Crown Corporation based in Lower Paxton Township, paid for all that stuff. So this particular project, the Prahl Tract, believe it or not, has been designated for residential housing probably for a couple decades or more. I mean, that's the vision that the township had for this property. This is nothing new. And, a lot of people are concerned about the wildlife. I guess there's deer herds on the property, all kinds of birds. Other small animals that are going to be displaced if this thing is developed. And unfortunately, at this point in time, the only way to go that route and preserve this land is for a group of citizens or a conservancy, some sort of conservation group, would put money together, approach the current owners, Mission Land Company and try and work out a deal where it could be conserved. In other words, they would sell it to this group. And it's unlikely at this point that they would do that because they're very interested in developing it. And if everything pans out right, I'm sure it'll be a profitable venture for a developer. But you'd probably have to come in with, $9, 10, $15 million because a developer can make much more than that on this thing if it can be successfully developed. So it's a long shot to be able to preserve it in that way. In most cases, from a citizen's point of view, your best bet is to get involved in the process. Better yet, form a group of people. Whenever, if you're familiar with Stray Winds Farm, there was a group called SWAN, Stray Winds Area Neighbors. They formed and they worked with, in that case, again, it was Triple Crown Corporation to address concerns on that farm property that's now pretty much fully developed. And the citizens, that SWAN group, made a big difference in terms of what showed up there. They had their concerns addressed, probably not completely, but if they would not have gotten involved, there would have been some things there that would have been, unpopular, and people would have complained about them. But in this case, citizens did get involved. Now, Devon Manor, it's a sizable development. Many people living there. Many people don't want to see as few impacts as possible. Now's the time for a leader or leaders in your community to start to put together, plans to form a group. And so you'd have a unified voice when it comes to negotiating and lobbying at township meetings of various types that'll deal with this thing. Now's the time to start doing that if you want to have a clear, singular voice in terms of what you want to see happen here. And last night, the developers, if they stay true to their word, they want to work with the community. That's why they showed up last night. They didn't have a plan. They wanted to hear from the planning commission members, and they also wanted to hear from, the citizens who showed up, and they did speak. But it makes much more sense to have one group that you work together. You come up with you come up with a message so that you don't have 5, 6, 7, 10, a dozen people coming up with their own ideas. Get together, work together, and then work with the township and that developer. And that's when you're going to have your best shot to limit the impacts as much as possible. So again, I'm here for a few more minutes to answer questions. Dolores, thank you for your question. It seemed like there was a lot of questions from people who posted comments, and that's why I wanted to take a few minutes tonight and hang out with you guys and answer any questions or find out questions that you have and try and find the answers for them. So anyone have questions here that's listening or want me to address something specifically that you wonder about, you don't know how it's going to work, that kind of thing. And while I'm waiting for questions to come in, again, this 2026, we have the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And here at Dauphin County Heroes Grove, the township is putting on what they're calling the 250th American PA Star Spangled Spectacular. I guess it's easier to say Star Spangled Spectacular. It's going to be Sunday, July 5th from 4 to 8 o'clock at Heroes Grove, and it's a free event. So they're going to have the Lower Paxton Variety Band, the Susquehanna Dance Academy will be there, Freedom Guard and Dance, and the Colin Alvarez Band. And entertainment, themed activities, free popcorn, and giveaways. So that's what's happening July 5th. I believe on July 4th, the local community foundation is putting on their own spectacular. So we'll have 2 days of celebrations at Heroes Grove, Dauphin County Heroes Grove, there at Commons Drive, right beside the Friendship Center. Any other questions? We'll hang out here for just a few more minutes. Let's see. I will say, while I'm waiting to see if there are any other questions show up, Lingostown Gazette has been in operation this time around since early last year, 2025. And, I recently retired from, working for a company that provided information about state government. So I have more time to put into this, but I'm already pretty much tapped out as far as what I can do. Really, I've spent most of my time covering Lower Paxton Township, and they really have a complete local news service. We really want to try and expand our coverage to West Hanover Township, Swatara Township, Middle Paxton Township, Dauphin Borough, the Borough of Paxton, and Borough of Pembroke, and also Middle Paxton Township. So the only way we're going to be able to do that under a nonprofit setup where no one's getting paid, it's all volunteers, is to find some community watchdogs. And we're not, notice I didn't say reporters, I didn't say writers. You don't have to have any experience. You just have to have ears, eyes, the ability to take some notes during a meeting that you attend or you watch on TV. We just need more eyes on local government. If we work together, we could have, really set an example for other communities across our country, that we can work together as a community and keep tabs on what's happening in our government. Because our elected officials locally here, all these townships and boroughs, they work for us as citizens. I mean, they're not rulers, they're not kings and queens. They're here to serve us. And if we need to know what's going on to be able to instruct them, to tell them what we need to have done. And, here's an example that showed up in recent weeks and months and over the years, that all these bandit signs have showed up on utility poles and different places where they're actually illegal. In the most, the case we're focused on right now for the moment are the Bengal kitten signs that show up. Nothing wrong with kittens or cats, but you're not supposed to use utility poles for your billboards or your signs, especially when they're handwritten, they look ugly. That's not supposed to be happening. And now at one time, believe it or not, I'm told by a former township employee that Lower Paxton Township employed a part-time worker who went around and policed the township. It was probably smaller at the time in terms of number of streets and different things, but they policed the township for these illegal bandit signs and, took them down. So maybe one of the solutions is that the township returns back to that. But if you want to see that visual pollution, like these made up signs where they're not supposed to be, we can tell the supervisors, hey, let's get rid of that, make our town look better, our township. Whenever visitors come in here, I'm sure they don't want to see signs, and it's just beautify our township, help us have a good looking township. My good friend Anthony Cristillo says if you go to Derry Township, you don't see that kind of stuff. They probably police it or frustrate the people doing it because they take time to put the signs up and don't take them down. If you have a yard sale, well, yeah, you can put them up. They're illegal, but you're going to take them down after the yard sale. That works for me and probably a lot of people. But when you're going to put them up and leave them up, that's a problem. I think I'll have to take a look at the sign ordinance. If you're running for office, there is a window of time where you can put up campaign signs. But Bengal kitten signs, that doesn't work. So again, that's a citizen saying, hey, look, let's take care of this. And there's other situations I could point out. That's just one I've been involved in here over the last number of weeks and few months. Last call now for comments. If anyone has any questions about the Prahl Tract, what happened last night at the Planning Commission meeting, maybe something you didn't understand about if you were at the meeting, as far as what was said and what the developer had said, and whatever, just put it in the comments and I'll answer it. Next week, I'll be spending some time to transform what was said. I recorded it, have a transcription of what was said during the public comment period, and we'll put out a detailed report as far as what was said. That might help you understand some things, but based on what I've seen in the comments, there's quite a few people who don't understand the process that the township has to go through before deciding whether to approve a plan. Some people aren't sure why this is even happening. And all those things I can give you some insight depending on, if anyone puts anything in the comments. The only other thing I'll address before signing off, if there's no more questions, is that some people think that the township officials, love to see these developments come in because it produces some additional property taxes down the road whenever the project's finished and people are buying their homes. And so now year by year, the township's going to get more tax money. The school district's going to get more tax money. Well, that typically doesn't work out, especially when it comes to education. When these developments come in, rarely do the increased taxes cover the increased costs. Again, especially for schools. We're at a point now, Central Dauphin School District, where the school district is pretty much tapped out as far as school crowding. I mean, they're running out of room. So not only this particular project, the Wenrick Street project, things happening in other townships, we've reached a tipping point when it comes to classroom space. So expect that over the next few years that you're going to hear conversations about adding on the buildings, maybe building a middle school, whatever it may be. Right now, the school district's focused on getting these kindergarten centers up and running, 4 of them. But I think after they get that thing under their belt over the next few weeks, they're going to have to turn some of their attention to what are we going to do with the influx of students that these developments are going to bring. And even on the township level, when these streets eventually will be turned over to the township, the ones that will be created in the Prahl Tract, there's going to be stormwater infrastructure to maintain. Potentially have to hire additional police, fire issues, all those kinds of things cost money. There's been a lot of studies done on this. Typically, that just keeping your tax rate the same, bringing in this additional money, it over the long run does not work out. So that this is where you get tax increases, this kind of thing. The best kind of, from a taxation point of view, the best kind of development in many people's eyes is to bring in commercial development. If there's going to be development that's going to be done, because then you don't have the school issues. Most businesses don't require a lot of municipal services, that kind of thing. So that's the most valuable in terms of taxation, not so much when it comes to residential. Okay, folks, don't see any more questions. So I'm going to sign off for this evening. I'll be back with my co-host, Anthony Cristillo, for the next edition of Lingostown Gazette Live, our weekly podcast, and see what we get into there. We try and make it entertaining. It's a news magazine podcast, not a news broadcast. It's not like the 6 o'clock news. We try and cover a lot of ground and keep you up to date. So again, thanks for tuning in for those of you who did. And we'll see you Monday night, 7 o'clock, Facebook and YouTube for our next episode of Lingostown Gazette Live. Have a good evening. See you Monday.